In ancient Persia, farmers grew pomegranates and wheat in the desert without irrigation canals, without hauling water, without daily labor. They buried clay pots in the ground, filled them once a week, and the earth watered itself. The technique spread from Persia to Rome to China, feeding civilizations for 4,000 years. Then in the 20th century, it vanished. Not because it stopped working, because it threatened the most powerful industry on Earth, water. Today, a farmer using this method can face fines up to $5,000 for unauthorized groundwater recharge. In 3 minutes, I'll show you the exact law that makes this illegal. But first, you need to see the system they outlawed. The method is called Olla irrigation. Brutally simple. Take an unglazed clay pot, bury it to its neck in soil, fill it with water, cover the opening. The clay is porous. Water seeps through the walls at a rate determined by soil moisture. When soil is dry, flow increases. When saturated, flow slows. Self-regulating. Plant roots grow toward the moisture, wrapping around the buried pot. No pumps, no timers, no human intervention. Just physics and clay. Archaeological evidence shows ollas in use by 400 BC in Persia. The technique appears independently across civilizations. Rome by 100 AD, documented by Columella and Palladius. China's Han Dynasty, 200 AD, records describe earthen jars for field watering. Ancestral Puebloans in the American Southwest, 900 AD. But the most extensive record comes from North Africa. In 2017, archaeologists excavating a 2,000-year-old farm in Tunisia found over 200 buried ollas still intact beneath ancient olive groves. Soil moisture probes showed elevated moisture 18 inches from each vessel. The pots had been empty for 2 millennia, but the clay had stained the soil darker, marking centuries of seepage. Pliny the Elder wrote about Olla irrigation around 77 AD in Natural History. He described Roman gardeners using porous vessels to maintain moisture in dry climates, claiming they reduced watering labor by 3/4 compared to surface watering. So if ollas worked for 4,000 years, feeding empires across 5 continents, what happened? Stay with me, because the answer exposes how water became a subscription service. It started in the early 1900s with industrial irrigation. In 1902, the U.S. Reclamation Act launched massive dam and canal projects. Companies like Caterpillar and John Deere began manufacturing mechanized irrigation, center pivots, sprinklers, drip lines. The message was clear: modern agriculture meant capital-intensive infrastructure. A buried pot required no equipment sales, no maintenance contracts, no consumable parts, one-time expense, decades of use. By the 1950s, agricultural extension offices taught a single irrigation model, scheduled watering via mechanical systems. Check USDA bulletins from that era. Olla irrigation doesn't appear once. Not as history, not as an alternative, completely absent, as if 4,000 years of proven technique never existed. The legal suppression came in the 1970s. State water regulations began classifying buried pots as groundwater recharge systems. The logic: water seeping underground could contaminate aquifers. In practice, farmers needed permits. In California, the State Water Resources Control Board requires permits for any irrigation method that infiltrates water below the root zone. Technically, an Olla triggers this. In 2009, a community garden in Tucson installed 50 Ollas for water conservation. The Water Authority issued a cease and desist. The buried pots violated municipal code by distributing untreated water subsurface. After 2 years of legal battles, they won an exemption, but only after proving each Olla was less than 1 gallon and buried less than 12 inches deep. Think about that. Why would water authorities fight a method that conserves water? Follow the money. Municipal water systems charge by volume. A household reducing consumption 70% through Olla irrigation generates 70% less revenue. In areas with tiered pricing, high-use customers subsidize infrastructure. If large numbers drop to minimal consumption, rates must increase for everyone, or the system becomes financially unsustainable. Ollas threaten the economic model of centralized water distribution. And the suppression isn't just legal, it's cultural. Garden supply companies don't sell Ollas. Big box stores don't stock them. Google searches for Olla irrigation remained flat from 2004 to 2020. Meanwhile, drip irrigation peaked at 500,000 monthly searches. Drip systems require emitters, filters, timers, tubing, all consumables needing replacement. Ollas require clay, once. So how effective are Ollas? The data is stark. A 2015 University of Sao Paulo study compared Ollas to drip systems and sprinklers in tomato production. Ollas used 70% less water than sprinklers, 40% less than drip, while producing yields 15% higher. Root development showed 30% more root mass concentrated around buried pots, creating drought resistance even when surface soil was dry. In 2018, New Mexico State University tested Ollas in desert gardens with zero rainfall for 6 months. They buried unglazed pots 10 inches deep, refilled weekly. Pepper plants with Ollas required 0.5 gallons per week. Same plants with drip, 1.8 gallons. That's 72% reduction. Over a season, one plant saved 65 gallons. Scale that across 50 plants. 3,250 gallons saved per season. At urban water rates of $4 per 1,000 gallons, that's $13 annually. Not huge for homeowners, but for commercial agriculture, a 1-acre vegetable farm uses 750,000 gallons per season with conventional irrigation. Switch to Ollas, 225,000 gallons, saving $2,100 annually. But in regions facing water scarcity, Ollas aren't about savings, they're survival. A farmer in drought-stricken Kenya installed 200 Ollas across 2 acres in 2019, refilled from rainwater catchment. While neighbors' crops failed, his harvest was normal. He used 80% less water and produced the same yield. The mechanism is physics, not magic. Conventional irrigation applies water to the surface. Some soaks in, much evaporates. Runoff carries nutrients away. Olla irrigation delivers water directly to root zones. Zero evaporation, zero runoff. Roots stay concentrated. The plant invests energy in growth instead of extensive root searching. There's also a biological advantage. Olla irrigated soil maintains consistent moisture without saturation. This prevents wet, dry cycling that stresses plants and promotes root diseases. In the Sao Paulo study, tomatoes with Ollas showed 50% less blossom end rot, a calcium deficiency from inconsistent watering. One more detail: water temperature. Surface irrigation delivers water at ambient temperature, 90 degrees Fahrenheit or hotter in summer. Root shock from hot water slows growth. Water from buried Ollas stays at soil temperature, 60 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Plants absorb without stress. So how do you implement this without legal trouble? Here's the loophole. In most jurisdictions, Ollas are legal for residential gardens if they meet 3 criteria: hold less than 2 gallons each, buried in your property's root zone, not shared groundwater, filled with potable water, not gray water. Check municipal code under landscape irrigation. If drip systems are allowed without permits, Ollas should be too, since they use less water and infiltrate at shallower depths. For DIY, use unglazed terracotta pots, not ceramic, not glazed pottery. Walls must be porous. Take 2 identical pots, 6 to 12 inches diameter. Apply waterproof silicone around one rim, flip it upside down, press it onto the other rim. You've created a sealed sphere with 2 holes. Seal the bottom with cork or clay plug. Top hole is your fill opening. Bury so only the neck sits above soil. Depth depends on crops: 6 inches for lettuce, 10 to 12 inches for tomatoes. Space Ollas based on seepage radius. A 1-gallon Olla creates an 18-inch moisture zone. Overlap by placing them 16 to 20 inches apart. Fill, cover to prevent evaporation and mosquitoes, walk away. Check weekly. A 1-gallon Olla in well-draining soil empties in 5 to 7 days during hot weather. In clay soil, 10 days. You're not watering on schedule, you're refilling when empty. Plant in a circle around each Olla, 6 to 8 inches from the neck. Seeds germinate from residual moisture or light hand watering. Once roots establish, they find the Olla. Within 3 weeks, roots wrap around the buried pot. Surface watering is over. The system is autonomous. Here's a real test you can run. Set up control bed with drip and Olla bed side by side. Same crop. Tomatoes work well. Water drip bed according to standard, 1 inch per week. Refill Ollas when empty, log volume. At harvest, weigh yield and total water use. Olla bed uses 40 to 70% less water, produces equal or higher yields. A gardener in Southern California documented this in 2020. 2 4x8 beds, both with cherry tomatoes. Drip bed, 520 gallons over 120 days. Olla bed, 180 gallons. Harvest from drip, 48 pounds. Olla, 52 pounds. Same soil, sun, seeds. Only variable, water delivery. But Ollas offer one more advantage no modern system can match: resilience. Drip fails when emitters clog or timers malfunction. Power outages stop electric pumps, but an Olla full of water keeps seeping for a week whether you're home or not. In 2021, during the Texas freeze that knocked out power and water, gardeners with Olla systems kept early spring crops alive. While neighbors scrambled to hand water from melted ice, Olla irrigated beds maintained moisture from water stored underground, insulated from freezing by the soil itself. This is 4,000-year-old technology, more reliable than anything invented last century. Older than Rome, older than intellectual property. No one owns it, no corporation can patent it, no government can tax it. That's precisely why it's been buried. When Pliny wrote about Ollas in 77 AD, he described it as common knowledge. Every gardener knows it. By 1977, the USDA had no record of it. That's not accidental forgetting, that's systematic suppression. But clay doesn't care about profit margins. Water doesn't respect zoning codes. Soil doesn't forget 4,000 years of physics. The Persian farmers who invented Ollas weren't engineers, they were observers. They watched clay pots sweat in heat. They wondered what would happen buried. They tested. It worked. They taught their children. Then modern agriculture decided simple solutions were primitive, that anything not connected to a power grid or patent portfolio was backwards. Here's what they didn't count on. You don't need permission to bury a pot. You don't need a license to use clay. You don't need an instruction manual to refill a jar weekly. The ancient Persians gave you this knowledge for free. Big Ag tried to bury it, but you just dug it up. If this makes sense, if you can see yourself filling a clay pot instead of running sprinklers, share it with someone tired of water bills. The system is waiting. The clay is patient. The soil has held the secret for 4,000 years. All you have to do is dig.